Okay, hey everyone. Thanks for joining. Looks like we are live now. Let's give folks just a couple minutes to file in, and then we'll get started. Looking over here at the room, it looks like wow, yeah, we've got a lot of current clients and some new faces or new names. Thanks for joining. Glad you're here. It's really great to see so many people signing up for this. The first one that we did, Email Isn't Dead, Volume 1, had an awesome response, and Volume 2 is having, I think, an even better response. So while you're here, go ahead and use the chat, introduce yourselves. Let us know who you are, where you're from. Okay. Well, let's go ahead and get started. We're about 1 minute after. Yeah, please feel free to use the chat if you have any questions along the way. We have several shifters in here that can answer your questions, and if I happen to see it and we have time in the presentation, I'll do my best to address it. In case you weren't all aware about what this webinar is about, it's about email, and it's not dead. It's alive and it's kicking, and it's beating most other marketing channels hands down. We're going to show you how to get that kind of performance in this presentation with some best practices, and also show you some trends that you can go home and or back to your job and apply in your workplace. I'm Isaac Ferreira. I lead I lead growth strategy here at Shift, and I've spent the last 25 years connecting technology to growth in both the public and private sector as an employee and a consultant. I find and execute paths to growth that include the proper combination of people, product, and technology. And today we're talking about technology. So before we jump in, I want you all to know that if you look at the resources tab inside of the webinar platform, you'll find a download for email best practices. That's probably the easiest way to get it. This email best practices guide has a lot of the content that we already have in this presentation, but it's something you can take home with you and use as a reference as you go forward. You're also welcome to download it via the QR code if you like to, but it's much easier to get it out of the platform. So what are we talking about today? So we're going to talk about email best practices. We're going to start with deliverability, go into the legal landscape, talk about creative and personalized experiences, then move into some measurement and environment, talking about dark mode and some other items, and then testing and optimization, and then we'll jump into trends. There's a lot of content today, just to be very clear. I think we have 45 slides and about an hour. So we're going to go through this as effectively as we can. If you have questions or I'm going too fast along the way, just let me know and I'll try and slow down. So that being said, we have a poll for you. You should see a poll pop up in your chat right now. What do you believe your top marketing channel is? So go ahead and answer now. And we'll see if you guys align with the results that we've seen. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Okay, enough of that. I'm sure you guys don't want to hear me humming anymore. It looks like the results, email marketing came in at top with 75% of you, and paid search ads at 25%. And you know what's really interesting is it really closely aligns with this litmus poll that was run. When they were polled, 79% of marketers put email in their top 3 marketing channels overall, and 41% said it was the most important channel. So then the question is, if that's the most important channel, why are we not all seeing the results that we would expect for it? What are the challenges facing us in email? Well, there's a lot. There's a ton of factors that impact ROI in your email program. Email isn't the simple channel that it was back in 1995 when I was using it to coordinate covert escapes, out the window with my buddies, or in 2003 when I was using it to communicate with my family while deployed in a submarine in the Persian Gulf. Now today, it's a multi-tentacled monster that requires a 45-page booklet called the Email Best Practices booklet to show you how to make it sing. And if you guys didn't get that email best practices guide, go into the resources and grab it. It's going to be helpful for you in the future. Let's jump into what some of those best practices are. We're going to start with deliverability. I know it's not the sexiest topic, but it's fundamental to a properly functioning email program, and it really is the base that helps you drive your key KPIs. So when you talk about deliverability, there's a couple key categories that you need to think about. You need to think about your list hygiene. Do you have emails in there that are cold and people are marking as spam? Are they not opening your emails because they're not interested? Are you removing bounces regularly and cleaning up the list, or sunsetting disengaged users? If you're not doing those things, it's going to lower your open rate and your engagement rate, and it's going to affect your deliverability. The second one is your sender reputation. So you have to make sure that you're constantly monitoring blacklists and spam filters on some of these ESPs. A lot of them will just blacklist you. You'll never know it until you see your deliverability, fall off a cliff. Then you have to go through and try and figure out how to remediate it. So make sure you're monitoring those. The third item is authentication. So SPF, DKIM, and DMARC, these are required for almost all the major ESPs today. If you're not using these and they're not set up correctly, you're going to be going to spam a large portion of the time. Also, make sure that users aren't marking your emails as spam instead of unsubscribing. Whatever you're sending to these readers to your list, it has to be relevant. It has to be something that they either want to hear about, will engage with, and aren't annoyed by. Because if they get annoyed, you'll find that readers will just hit unsubscribe, or sorry, will hit spam out of spite and won't even take the time to unsubscribe. So make sure it's relevant and they want to hear from you. And the last one's frequency. So there's three kind of buckets here. You could be sending too much, in which case your readers just get sick of hearing from you. You could send it not often enough, so low frequency, in which case your readers don't engage with you very often. And when one does show up, they may not engage with it. Or there's irregularity. And the irregularity is really interesting because if you start with 20,000 emails a month, and then all of a sudden you jump up to 40,000 emails a month, the ESPs are going to flag that as possible spam. So you need to make sure you have an email cadence that follows a certain amount of send every single month. And if you plan to increase it or decrease it, then ramp it down or ramp it up. So that's kind of deliverability in a nutshell. Let's go look at the legal landscape. And I know this is also not a fun topic. We will get to the fun stuff, I promise, but we need to go through the basics to start with. So when you think about regulations, they're growing exponentially. What you just saw scroll past was a list of all the current, not all, a large portion of the current regulations that exist. And these things are adding every single year, either a new regulation or changing the regulations that exist out there. And then the question becomes, how do we keep up with all this change in regulation? How do we keep up with all the governing bodies that tell us how we can communicate with the folks in their jurisdictions? It's challenging to do it on a case-by-case basis, but if you have some rules in place, it'll really help you deal with these and help you not get overwhelmed, right? So there's 6 core principles that can help you stay out of the compliance purgatory. The first is the customers should have the ability to control the data that we collect about them, just as a general rule. They should be able to go to a preference center and say, I want to hear about this. I don't want to hear about this. I want to unsubscribe. By making that available to your readers, A, you're building trust. B, you're making sure you're maintaining relevancy. And C, you're following a lot of the rules that are in place, let's say in Canada or California with CCPA or in Europe with GDPR. The second one is customers should be able to opt out from any non-sensitive data collection. If you're collecting data on your customers or your readers, make sure that they can opt out of that data collection. This is true no matter where you're at and where you're marketing. There's 40 states that don't require an opt-out right now, 40 or more states that don't require an opt-out right now. We recommend you still have that capability because it directly affects the relevancy of your list and your deliverability going forward. The third one is customers should have to opt into sensitive data collection. It needs to be explicit. There should be no assumption that they've given permission. It needs to be explicit, them saying, yes, I want this, for all the same reasons that we talked about in items 1 and 2. Item number 4 is really interesting because you're seeing these regulations pop up in different areas of the world. So we know that Canada has privacy regulations, but Quebec has its own set of privacy regulations. So locality is becoming really important to understand and collect so that you can properly administer your email program, but also the rest of your marketing. Number 5 is data security is essential. Make sure that in everything you do, you're managing who can access the data, when they can access it, for what purpose, and then how you manage the outbound marketing and who it's being shared with. Number 6 is always refer to your legal counsel for final decisions regarding your data and privacy strategies. The days of being able to go this completely alone, I would say for a smaller organization can probably still be managed, but once you get into a mid-size and enterprise organization, you've got to have legal tuned into your outbound strategy to make sure that you're following the rules and you're not going to end up in a bad position. So we talked about getting to the fun stuff. Let's jump into some of that fun stuff. Let's start with creative. So what's really interesting about our brains is we're built for visual information. In the wild, our survival depended on rapid classification and then being able to take action. Like, is that a hungry saber-toothed tiger, or is that a Neanderthal's husband gnawing on a bone? One requires one, kind of life-saving action, get up and run, and the other requires a flip-flop, stop chewing on that bone. So we've evolved this capability to process imagery quickly. In fact, we do it in under 13 milliseconds, which is pretty incredible. This result of evolution, it impacts our ability to comprehend and interact with things. So visual information is always going to be more effective than text at getting attention. In fact, when you look at text, you can look at patterns. This is a heat mapping of an email. You can look at the patterns in the email and see that most people will look at the headlines and just skim the headlines and stop on the images. So a majority of your message, if it's not contained in the headline and images, isn't being understood or collected. So what do? You can. So you've heard the term, the pen is mightier than the sword. What I really want you all to understand is that the pen might be mightier than the sword, but an image will steal the pen's lunch. That being said, be careful with those images, because the images can steal the show. They can steal the spotlight. You can see here the readers are focusing on the baby's face. Who doesn't love a cute baby, right? But the baby is actually a thief in diapers because it's stolen the effectiveness of your messaging. Have I confused you yet? So I just told you that it's both great and bad at the same time. The problem is that if the image you're using isn't conveying the message, then it's ineffective. If the image you're using isn't directing attention to the message, then it's stealing away from the effectiveness. So how do you deal with this? One way is to use the image to direct the attention. So you can see here the baby is actually looking at the text. It's looking at your messaging, and you can see that the attention, while still on the baby's face, is now being pushed over into the text and into the images on the bottom right. So you're using an image to direct focus. You can use this in a lot of different ways, but it's always great to make sure that you're heat mapping and testing your emails to understand where the focus is being drawn and adjust as necessary. So something else to be aware of is to make sure that you're designing for minimalism, meaning have just what's needed to convey the message, have just what's needed to support your brand, while not creating too much clutter that distracts away from the intent of the email, which is to get interaction, generally speaking, unless it's a newsletter with no calls to action, which I really don't recommend. So the first one you want to make sure you're doing is create visual hierarchy. So it's very easy to follow where you're going. You can see on the top left, the New York Times, you have a big image with kind of the top level message, go deep with the Times, that funnels down into a final point, which is the call to action. You can see on the right side that we have two basic images. One is the MailChimp logo. The second is an image of the phone that shows what you can do in the app if you were to use MailChimp. It's very effective, and you can see it all funnels down to one call to action. It's very clear where the activity is expected. Reduce the number of colors. You can see both of these examples do that very clearly. Use graphics sparingly. I said that once, I'm going to say it again. Make sure you're using graphics sparingly. Use too many, you're drawing the attention away from your message. You're drawing the attention away from your call to action. Also think about negative space. Negative space is your friend because it can direct the eye to where there's something happening. If you look at both of these, there's negative space that draws you toward the CTA. Keep the text short and sweet and make sure it's legible and easily understood. If it's too long, They're going to stop reading. Remember, we talked about the fact that people mostly just skim headlines or subjects. And then the last item is avoid too many CTAs. Too many CTAs is distracting. They won't know where to click, what to do. So make sure you have a single CTA. All right, let's talk about some design considerations. So the first one is avoid complex column arrangements. You saw how simple those two emails were before. Keep it very simple. Column arrangements, once again, distract the reader from knowing where to look or accomplishing the action that you've set out to accomplish, which is a click-through to get to your site. Design with a strict grid in mind and minimize overlapping elements. Overlapping elements create visual interference that creates the same kind of problem. Make sure you have padding along all of your elements so that whenever you change the screen size, the resolution, that padding keeps all the elements separate and not overlapping. If you don't have the padding, they will overlap and it's just going to be a horrible experience. Make sure the content follows a natural order of left to right stacking on mobile, because most people in the US read left to right. Let's make sure that the content stays in that order whenever you have to change the resolution of the screen size. Develop module patterns that accommodate the up and down size of the scaling images and CTA buttons. And make sure you export images at 2x size for Retina displays. Retina displays are very high resolution, and if you use a standard resolution image, they're not going to be very clean looking inside of the email. So make sure you're taking the time to get those high resolution images. So if we talk about copy considerations, it's really important that you incorporate both the setup and payoff within the subject line. Like, what are you offering and what's in it for me, or what's in it for your reader in the subject line to gain the interest and get them to open the email and read it. That pre-header and primary content headline is really the determining factor for if your email gets open or not, if you even get a chance for a click-through. So make sure you have the setup and payoff at the top. Always use the appropriate brand and voice and tone. So if you haven't established, which you should, an established voice and tone for your organization, make sure you're using that same voice and tone and it stays consistent through all of your communications, but also through your email. Ensure the message is scannable. We already showed you that people scan sections and titles. Make sure it can be scanned and easily understood. Leave the details in the other text, but make sure the headlines contain the messaging. Avoid large blocks of text. This should be kind of a no-brainer. We have very short attention spans as humans. Make sure the blocks aren't more than 3 or 4 lines long, and make sure you're using visual breaks for copy-heavy content. But make sure you make it feel like a landing page, not so much like a book in an email, because it's just very hard to follow and interact with. So one of the last considerations here is we have to make sure we're designing for accessibility. 15% of the world's population has some form of disability, and that's a large part of your audience. If you're not designing for that, these folks aren't able to interact with you effectively, and that's going to reduce the effectiveness of your email program. So make sure that you're following proper ratio for color contrast. Generally speaking, it's 4:1. Use legible fonts and sizes. Don't use crazy squiggly fonts that are hard for people to see or understand. Just use basic fonts that are within your brand guidelines. Make sure you maintain a clear reading structure and maintain an image to live text ratio of about 60% live text, 40% image, and ensure clear and unobstructed calls to action. So the next really important area in your email program is personalization. And personalization is one of my favorite topics in marketing, not just in email, but in marketing generally, because it's these elements that make the messaging content and offers feel like it was created, just for that reader. It's the quality of an experience that makes someone feel seen and special. It's part of what endears customers and prospects to a brand, and it's so much more than just a first name and a last name. So we've all heard of the 4 R's, but it just bears repeating right now. Effective messaging really requires the right message to the right person at the right time and the right place. The perfect message, kind of the white elephant message in marketing, exists at the intersection of those 4 R's. But that's also not where messaging ends. That's not where personalization ends. Let's think about this. If I look at a segment, I want a group of males born in 1948, born in the UK, married twice, lives in a castle, and is wealthy and famous. And even with all of those segment attributes, we still get two wildly different personas. I mean, marketing to Ozzy Osbourne would need to have bats and crucifixes and stuttering sentences. While the King of England, we'd need to have formal and pretentious kind of copy with titles of nobility. Um, it's just the marketing to these two personas is very different. And the point here is that segments are not customer profiles. Customer profiles are not segments. A segment helps you identify a group that you want to market to, but there's still personalization that has to occur within that customer profile going forward. The question becomes, how do I get all the data I need for that customer profile? If this is new to anyone, good. If it's a refresh, I'm sorry, but this is just something that we really need to make sure we cover so you understand where all this data is coming from that you use to build these customer profiles that enable effective email campaigns. The first is zero-party data, and this zero-party data just essentially means any data that your prospect or customer has volunteered you, has given to you. Their email preferences, their name, their phone number, whatever they give to you, right? First-party data is individual level data that's collected on your own website. Let's say that you have a first-party cookie on your website, or they engage with your emails, or the purchase history. That's all first-party data. It's data that you own simply by interacting with your customers. Second-party data is individual level data acquired from a trusted partner. Let's say you have a partner who you're going to market with. That partner sharing that data with you from that campaign is second-party data. Third-party data is aggregate data collected from one or more sources, meaning if I buy enrichment data from a third-party, let's say B2B kind of data broker, that would be third-party data. It's data that's been purchased. All of this data can be used to build your customer profile to help you adequately personalize your messaging beyond just, hello, Bob. Great to know you. Instead, it can be, hey, Bob, I see it's your birthday, and last year you purchased 10 Whoosy What's It from us. Here's a free Whoosy What's It because you purchased this. It's personalization that matters to that person, not to the segment. So let's talk about measurement. And we've all heard this before, probably. I'm going to say it again. What gets measured gets improved. What gets measured gets managed. What gets measured gets fixed. The point is you have to measure. You have to know where you're at to know where you're going. If you don't, you're just lost. Decisions without data is intuition and guessing. And some people are really good at intuiting the path forward and guessing, and some are not. In fact, I'd say that most are not. So we need to make sure that we're actually measuring our program. Nearly half of all brands right now don't track interactions down to conversions. They have no idea what interactions lead to conversions. Fewer than a fifth measure the ROI from email. And just 12% of brands measure subscriber lifetime value, which many consider to be a North Star, metric. What value is email actually driving? So how do you improve without knowing where you are? How do you test it? How do you report on progress? And how do you justify the spend? How do you justify your existence or the growth of your email marketing program and the people that support it if you don't know where you are? It's a huge reason that organizations don't recognize the ROI and impact. They just don't know where they are. So shine a big light on your email program. Don't be afraid to take a close look. Make it known, and then make a plan to fix it. So what do you measure? There's a couple kind of high-level metrics that you can start with if you haven't started. The first one is click-through rate, otherwise known as CTR. It measures the percentage of people who have clicked on one or more links in the email. The second one is conversion rate, which measures the percentage of people who complete a goal or specific action, like clicking through to go to the website and filling out a form. And the third one is unsubscribe rate. So it measures the percentage of people who unsubscribe from your emails. Pretty clear. Now, if you haven't ever started measurement before, we've compiled some very basic high-level metrics for you that you can use. You'll find this in the email guide that's available in the resources as well, to show you where you should target for open rate, click-through rate, click-through open rate, bounce, and unsubscribe. These are just general metrics that have been collected by various different organizations that gives you kind of some round numbers to shoot for when you're setting up your key KPI targets. But there's a ton more. A lot of people like to call these vanity metrics. I don't know that they're necessarily vanity metrics, but they're precision metrics. These are metrics that are used to help identify specific aspects of the campaign, and there's tons of them you can use. You can also find this in the guide. But once you have the top level metrics down and you have a program in place to improve those and manage those, then you can look at the second level metrics to understand where you're at and how to get to the next level. All right, another concern here, best practices around your environment. This is like the platforms that you support. Earlier, we talked about the 4 Rs, and one of them was right place. We need to meet our readers and customers and prospects where they are and on the device they're on. Many times this means configuring the email to work in their environment. 42% of users delete emails that are not optimized for mobile devices. And mobile views outrank desktop views 3x because we always have our phone. We're viewing emails through our phones constantly. If you take anything away from this whole presentation, anything at all, it's designed for mobile, designed for mobile, designed for mobile. If you're not designing for mobile, you're losing 3 times of the views and almost half of your emails are getting deleted. Make sure it supports mobile. Some other environmental concerns are make sure you have a responsive design. We touched on this a little bit earlier, but make sure that based on the form factor and resolution of your client's device or your reader's device, that it scales so it's still readable, clean, interactive, and they have a good experience. Make sure that you're doing some form of content consumption analysis. Analyze your data to see how your customers are actually consuming the content and on which device. Meaning, are they using Chrome on a PC or are they using Safari on their phone or their iPad? And then pick the top 3 or 4 biggest ones. Usually the top 3 or 4 devices account for 80 to 90% of your traffic. Make sure that you're always testing for those devices in those configurations so that your readers are having a great experience. And then also, once again, test on desktop, test on mobile. You need to make sure that it works on mobile or you're losing half the views and 3 times the reads. Something else that I think has come up a few times, not everyone's really aware of, is that 25% of your customers, your readers, use dark mode. And if your emails are not configured for dark mode, they're not going to be able to see the text effectively or look at the backgrounds or any of the features that you have in this thing. If you're not designing for dark mode, 25% of these readers are going to look at it and say, I can't read that, and get rid of it. So optimize the logo. Make sure you're using images with transparent backgrounds that look good in dark mode and light mode. Use a white line around dark text. That way, when they go into dark mode, you can still see the text. And then regularly make sure you're testing in multiple environments, including dark mode. Another environmental factor, which is kind of a user factor as well, is send time optimization. So STO, as we call it, it's available in a lot of advanced marketing automation platforms. Some are powered with machine learning or AI to help figure it out for you. But it's really important that you're targeting email send times for the times that your reader group is awake and accessing their email. Now, you can do this based on time zone to start with, but make sure that early morning you're sending your emails before most recipients go to work, because that's when they're reading it, 4 a.m. to 6 a.m. And in the evening, 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. local time zone. If you don't, you risk being, that email is buried at 100 emails deep on the 3rd page of their email list. And I don't know about you, but I'd rather be at the top of the inbox, hopefully in the top 5 or 10, so I actually get looked at and read than buried pages away where I'm probably never going to get to. So think about STO, send time optimization, very important. The next is testing and optimization. And all the things that we've talked about all contribute to you being able to execute an effective email program, but improving those require you to be able to test it and optimize it. Now, it's really important when you think about testing and optimization that you aren't testing multiple factors at once. If you test multiple factors at once, you're not going to know which factor change affected that test, and you're not going to be able to go back and change your designs. You're going to get a bunch of false positives. So when you're creating your A/B testing program, make sure it's one factor at a time till you have that factor nailed in. Once you have it nailed in, move on to the next, right? So let's talk about what a testing program could look like. Well, let's not do that. Let's talk about never setting and forgetting first. One of the biggest challenges we see with our clients is that they create a nurture, or they create a newsletter, or they create a journey of some type, and they just let it run and never come back to it. They don't test it. They don't heat map it. They don't try and improve open rate, click through rate, etc. They're just, I've made emails. That's good enough. And the truth is it's not, because you're not getting the ROI. You're not getting the 36 to 1 or the 44 to 1 ROI. In fact, if you're doing that, you probably don't even know what your ROI is. You really need to treat email like an effective tactic and improve it. That means cleaning up your audience and segments and managing that email list. It means optimizing the journey builds. It means improving your creative where it needs to be improved. It means creating a testing strategy and executing it. And it means reporting in analytics, making sure that your team sees the way it's performing, and you're setting these responsible targets for them for growth. So what does a testing strategy look like? First, create a minimum 6-month testing plan based on either key data points, tactic, or an uncovered area of opportunity. So just think about open rates. Just say our open rates right now are very low on this email chain. My thesis is that if I change the text, make only one call to action, use only limited colors, that it's going to improve, and then change one of those at a time, test them. The ones that work, you keep. The ones that don't work, you get rid of, and you keep doing it until you achieve whatever your open rate goal is. So this is really create a test plan, write a hypothesis, run a sample segment with your tested element. Once approved, launch the test, obviously, and then bring back the learnings and the measurement to put back into your test plan to do it again. It's an iterative process, which is why you see this right arrow on the side. So that's kind of the best practices portion. Let's jump into the trends. And I have not been watching the chat. Let me see if there's any questions here. Okay, good to go. So let's start talking about some trends in email. So we covered a lot. You now know how to optimize your email program. Let's talk about some emerging trends. And we touched on this emerging trend earlier, but ESPs are getting very precise, and they're making it very challenging to hit the inbox. And they're doing it on purpose because they're trying to eliminate this massive spam problem they have. Spam clogs up their storage, which they have to pay for, and affects users' ability to use email effectively, right? So they're getting very harsh in the way that they handle it, right? They're also worried about compliance with federal regulation, as well as their users being duped and tricked by not so great actors. So let's make sure that when you're setting up your email, that you're setting up SPF, DKIM, and DMARC. We talked about that earlier. These are your DNS settings to make sure that you're authenticating. Make sure you're aggressively cleaning your list. If folks are not engaged, then get them off the list and prioritize opt-ins. Make sure that you're asking for the opt-in whenever you interact with these folks so that they want to be part of your list. Make sure you have value-driven content. Make sure that content is applicable to that reader and that they want it. You can do this with a preference center. You can do it by making sure that you invite them to look at the emails that are related to the advertising they came in on based on the vertical or maybe the topic. And make sure that you're monitoring your reputation. You've got to be making sure you're not on blacklists and that your sender score is where it needs to be with all of these ESPs. The third is there's new ways to build trust. And if you haven't ever seen Bimmy before, it's pretty awesome. We've implemented this for a ton of our clients. Relatively inexpensive as a tool, but does a lot for trust. It has your company logo next to the email. And that logo only comes up if it's verified that the email came from your sending domain, meaning if you have Bimmy, no one can say that they're you because they're never going to have this logo next to the name. Now your readers and your customer know it's you contacting them, and it's another layer for the ESPs for verifiability. Okay, so also AI is becoming a force multiplier in content production. And I know that you hear a lot about AI, but one place it's really, really helpful is developing the content for emails, but also mapping out the journeys. You'd be surprised what it can do now. 46% of marketers already use AI to assist with first draft copies. I know I do for a lot of the things I do. And 51% of marketers use AI tools to optimize the content, including their whole email campaign. So if this isn't something that you've looked into or necessarily understand, certainly something we can help with to get you on the right foot. The other thing that we're working with a lot of our clients and some of our very biggest clients we're working with on this is creating interactive content. So 91% of consumers want interactive content, but only 17% of marketers provide it. And when we say interactive content, we mean interactive charts and graphs and drop-down menus and things that make an email feel like an app. If you can effectively do that, you can get 200% more conversions in your email. And we're doing that with two of our largest clients right now. So we've went through the best practices, a lot of the best practices you can find in the guide. We've went through some current trends, and hopefully you guys got a ton out of this. We covered a lot of ground. One thing we'd like to offer you, if you feel like you need it or you want some help, we have a free or a no-cost email vitality audit. You can scan the QR code here or in your resources. You can click on the link to go to the landing page and fill it out. This is a collaborative diagnosis. Essentially, you send us 3 emails. We will do a technical analysis of your DNS setup as well as an evaluation of those 3 emails and give you some pointers on how to improve your program. And we'll do it in less than 5 days. We'll wrap it up with a 1-hour talk with our strategists to help you understand where you can improve it. So I'll leave this on the screen for 10 more seconds so you guys can scan it if you'd like to. And then we'll go into our next item. We talked about the email best practices and industry trends. You can get that here in the resources. Or once again, you can download it using this QR code. And before we wrap up, just want to take a second to tell you about Shift. Many of you have heard of us. Maybe not, you don't know what we do. We're a growth and services company serving enterprise marketing and sales organizations. We kind of took the best parts of a marketing and sales growth strategy consultancy, and we combined it with the best parts of a technology integrator and worked in design and development to bring you an end-to-end solution across digital product, RevOps, and lifecycle marketing. We don't just show you the path to growth, we walk it with you. That's why we say that we're the perfect blend of thinkers and doers, and we're purpose-built to drive growth. Thank you so much for attending. If you have any questions, we're going to do it directly after this. If you guys want to set up time to talk outside of the offers we made, you can scan this QR code, and that'll take you to a landing page where you can just fill it in an application, not an application, but the landing page, and we'll get right back to you. That being said, we want to open it up to Q&A. So if you have any questions, go ahead and drop them in the chat. We've got a couple minutes left where we can answer questions. Okay. Well, thanks so much for attending. It was great having you here. We'll let you know when version 3 is coming out, volume 3 is coming out, which should be shortly. Otherwise, have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.